yesterday, both that bizarre and disturbing speech that she gave, along with the picture of her scowling at Trump as he's walking by. You have to put this, why she exists, in context. She's Swedish, okay? Now, I have lots of followers and friends and supporters in Sweden. I'm not putting down Swedish people or such, but there's something very dour, depressing, and unhuman in many ways about Swedish culture. Having visited there a few times myself, I've found it an extremely unfriendly place. It's not only to foreigners, but to themselves. There's like a fear of actually acknowledging another person's humanity. I have seen two couples in a restaurant and not talk to each other all night, and that's not unusual. I've seen people looking down in supermarkets for terrified of making eye contact for another human being for fear that they acknowledge their own humanity. I was in the Stockholm metro and I saw a young lad wearing a Djurgårdens t-shirt, and I was expecting to have a talk about football, the universal language, soccer, and I started talking about like I in this, and he was like this. It was like this, and why are they like that? They were like that because of socialism. They have a socialism system. Like everything is very heavily controlled. There's beautiful natural countryside there. There's lots of Swedish people who are jolly and happy, but it's not the default. It just isn't. It's very miserable now and very unhappy. Now, when they ask those, you see those things about Scandinavians are the happiest people in the world. Well, if you look at these surveys, whether they're being given to Danes particularly or Swedes, they don't really have words for that kind of emotional happy. It basically means when they say we're very happy, it means I'm not sad. Now there's a whole spectrum between happy and sad, which could be mostly there. It's not to them when you say an English speaking person, an Irish person, an American, an Australian, an English, a British person, a Scottish person. Are you happy? And they say, yeah, I'm all right. Now, meaning that when they know what happy means, but when they ask that to the Swedes go, well, I'm not miserable and I'm not unhappy. You understand? It's a different phraseology of how the question is asked and spoken. So what we saw yesterday was not an autistic child, although I know she is. What we saw was the worst aspect of the Swedish mindset. The worst aspect of the Swedish mindset. Misery, dourness, unhappy, uncontented, wants to control everyone. She was almost like the way America has Columbia as a goddess, Britain has Britannia, Ireland has Eru, this kind of thing. If there was a goddess of modern day Sweden, she would be it. Now you have to understand there's a biblical context in all this. Sweden was one of the first countries to be Christianized. Not only that, they led tremendous crusades against the Prussians and the pagans. Three of them, by the way, on behalf of the Vatican to crush, annihilate, genocide pagans living in Eastern Europe. And people forget that they were driven by this. Now, and the Danes were on the same side as them. The Danes actually believed that their flag came from, well, I mean, not Ivy Dane, but their flag was handed down for them as a gift from God. It fell from heaven for killing pagans. I'm not joking about that. Now, Sweden, because it was one of the first countries to embrace the horrible religion of Lutheranism, an extremely paranoid, terrified, doom-laden, we're all going to suffer and die, we're doomed. It's almost like the same thing as Gnosticism or Calvinism. It's like, we're doomed, we're finished, this is horrible, life is terrible, there's no hope here. We're surrounded by sin and we must root out sinners. That's why Sweden has one of the most appalling histories of persecutions of witches. On an industrial scale similar to Scotland and Germany, and terrible, which are both Presbyterian countries as well. The Catholics don't persecute witches, only the Protestants do, in mass numbers. And This is because they're second. They're really the Protestant Bible is the Talmud. It's taken all the pagan stuff out, Catholicism out, and it has this Jehovah thing. There will be no other gods. There will be no other system. You will be punished if you do not what I say. And that's what Greta Thunberg or Thunberg, whatever her name is, on the council, the UN Council yesterday, making that speech. That was like Ian Paisley. Ye shall be judged. That's what that was. A child is not, and you go to some parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and you see little kids with a Bible, and the man says, "You shall be judged." You little fellas, little boys on the corner. I saw Greta Thunberg the exact same way yesterday. That's what ye shall be judged, and that is Jehovah kill. As what you call it, Julian Cope called it. That is Jehovah kill. It's dour, it's dark, and Trump beautifully trolled her when he said, "What a happy girl," in sarcastically. So to show what a fraud the whole thing is, today she changes her Twitter profile to say, "A happy girl who's positive about the future." Greta Thunberg is there to make your children hate their own existences. She's imposing the worst elements of Swedish Presbyterian culture, and she has replaced witchcraft with carbon. You know, in the past they would look for witch marks on the women, see these things. And if you read these prosecutions of witches in Sweden, they're absolutely hilarious. You know, not hilarious because people were horribly killed, but it was like the magistrates and the statutes and the lawyers would sit there and go, but they did copulate with rats under the full moon. What's the legal stature of this? I must check it according to the law. Okay, no one stops to say, this is utterly fucking preposterous that you're claiming that these people had turned into flying goats and had sex with cats, under a full moon. Instead of them saying that, they go, well, the law is very clear. You see this officialdom, this bureaucracy. So the whole thing is that, like, well, if bureaucracy and the law says that women and poor people in rural areas can transform into flying bats and go and land and have sex with goats and suck the blood of virgins, and then eat children, it must be true. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, if that's how preposterous that is. The law is quite clear about it. And that's the King James Bible Lutheran Presbyterian thing. It doesn't matter how preposterous it is. It's just it's the law. And they weaponize it by saying, "Ye shall be punished if you don't do this." So, you see, when you saw these witch hunts that happened in Sweden in the past, you would begin with someone who was a preacher in the town, would point to a bunch of people and say, "They were transforming into flying bats. They must be punished." Right? So then you'd have a magistrate and lawyers coming down, all very official, coming down from the central government and going to the preacher. What are you proposing? These are devil worshippers. These must be punished. Right? They transformed into bats. This kind of thing. And then the magistrate sit down and go, well, we have to do this legally and through the legal process. And they'll have a legal trial, and no one would stand up in court and say, this is fucking insane. You're accusing people who never did anything of transforming into bats. It's the same thing with the whole climate change thing. No one's standing up and saying, this is insanity. This is insanity. The idea that you're telling children that the world is going to end in a few years. This is insanity that an autistic 16-year-old is telling world leaders what to do. This is insanity that we actually have to, this is being forced on us in the first place. It shouldn't even exist. And people saying how brave and wonderful she is. It's just the same. It's like they used to have kids who would walk around villages in Sweden in the past going, witch, 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 to anyone. And they'd have these Jehovah kill Lutherans following with a Bible going, she must be a witch if that child says she is one. Let's call it magistrate. Let's have a legal, a proper court case. And it'll be a proper legal court case with defense and prosecution, a judge, following the book of the law, all very technical, and evidence would be presented by she turned into a bat under the full moon. And no one would say, but human beings can turn into bats in the full moon. And the lawyer would go, stop, that's not part of the case. We're not here to decide whether people can be bats or not under the full moon. We're here to find out, to find out if they're witches or not. And everyone go, yes, that makes it, yes, we'll stick with the court case. So you understand how you create a legal framework or a statutory framework, and you can base that statutory framework on an end product. In the case of, say, Sweden back in the 1600s, sorry, the case would be witchcraft. Did they do this? Now, it doesn't matter how preposterous it is, witchcraft is on the statute books. The same thing to carbon crimes. People are committing carbon crimes. Now, it doesn't matter if there's a whole bunch of science on either side of the spectrum, and we're still, like, science should be allowed to develop. We're having these so-called atheists and skeptics and scientific materialists actually looking at Greta Thunberg going around, he's a witch! She's a witch! And they're saying, well, it must be true because the climate change models. Well, what are models? Models are fate. They're a form of they're a fate. I think it's what we're seeing here again is like what I mentioned earlier on about Nero and 666 and the carbons on my other channel. I'll put the video link to my other video on this below. What we're seeing is there's a change going on, and this is a resistance between the old world, and this is why they're having to biblify or turn the whole Greta thing into a Joan of Arc thing. It's pseudo Christianity, because this is the system that these people function under. This statutory idea of if we've agreed on the end product is witchcraft, if we've agreed on the end product is the planet is dead in 5 years. It doesn't matter that we don't have to. We have legal statutes, statutory systems. We don't have to argue about is that true or not. That doesn't matter. It's already there. It's the end product. So a little girl going, "Ye are carbon witches. Ye are carbon witches, and you're going to kill us all. And you're going to kill us all." You know, this kind of thing. And no one says, that's utterly fucking preposterous. They go, well, we do have climate change, so we must pursue this. You see the insanity of it? And that's how a country and a society and a culture falls into totalitarianism. That's how it happens when nobody stands up and goes, that's preposterous, or this is not how it should be pursued. You shouldn't have. There should be a scientist up. There should be debating. Like, for instance, why don't we have at the top of the UN, say, a team of scientists, one who believe that the world is going to be destroyed by climate change in the next 10 or 30 years, and then on the other side, the other bunch saying it's not going to be. And then broadcast that out on the world media for everyone to see, for people to make their minds up. And then when it comes time for elections or any kind of public policy towards the environment, people can make their own mind up and vote on it. But you're not allowed to vote for it, because just like the witches in the past, you've been told it's a fact. They're turning into bats and flying under the full moon on their broomsticks, or whatever they said they did. It's a fact, just like it's Salem in Massachusetts. It's a fact. It's not a fact, it's an accepted consensus, I should rather say. And it doesn't matter what kind of madness and insanity gets us through it. Once we're focused on the fact that we have the consensus, it doesn't matter what's between then and now. And we see this with totalitarian governments everywhere. Mao's little red book. Nobody actually turned around and said, but that's just one guy's book. That's not the feelings of the entire nation. You see Stalin's 5-year plans. Like, no one stood up and says, these numbers are unfeasible. We don't have the infrastructure, or what? That's not the point. And if you disagree, which, and that's what we're dealing with the whole carbon thing now. I think because the whole climate change thing was an absolute catastrophic failure. They were expecting 90+% across the board saying, you know, falling for or believing it or being in the same doomsday cult that Greta Thunberg is leading. And in reality, it's a lot of people. It's not even 50% at this time are into it. Most people are apathetic. don't care or see through it. Now they're having to actually go into a kind of a religious crusade now, and that child is this is the children's crusade. This is how the crusades actually happened in the ones that the second and third crusades into the Middle East, led by children. The children were always weaponized. I talked about it in the other video. Yes, I'm not going to go any deeper into that, but it's via a mechanism of socialism and Second Temple Rabbinical Judaism, the Old Testament basically, and the New Testament, and the whole idea of fusing them both together, because ultimately Marxism would not exist if we didn't have the Bible, people of the books, right? So this is the whole thing within the Abrahamic mindset, that, as it says in the Quran, we don't have a problem with people of the books. That's the Bible, the Torah, and the Talmud. That was then extended to the Communist Manifesto. That was then extended to Engels' books on economic theories. That was then extended to Charles Darwin's Origin of Species. That was then extended to Mao's Little Red Book. That was then extended to The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins. That was then mandated towards an inconvenient truth. I mean, psychologically mandated towards an inconvenient truth by Al Gore. They're people of the books. This book is the ultimate truth. That only exists because of the Bible. Nothing else. This book is the ultimate truth. This Al Gore book is the ultimate truth. No, this is where we get this idea that these books cannot be debated, contradicted, put apart. So that's where that came from. All religious movements needed a book, and they gave them the book with Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth. Now, on top of all that, let's go back to, say, the witchcraft times, right? You could have a situation like someone had a brain, would have stood up back then and said, why are these people practicing folk and agrarian traditions and folklore that's prohibited by the Lutheran Church? And then someone has an intelligence says, well, could it be that there's something from their pagan traditions that they wish to maintain that's not provided for them within our new religious system, okay? And then someone would say, okay, in a sane world, someone would say, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe we should have a bit of leniency, like the Catholics did, in Catholic nations, a little bit of leniency to understand we're dealing with a folk tradition. We're dealing with something like that. But no, it's the devil's work. He's a witch. She's a witch. Now, the same thing with this whole climate cult. Why don't we have someone come forward and say, okay, we do have a lot of pollution problems in the world. We should try to cut down on our emissions of all kinds, a lot, especially in cities. The cars and buses and trucks diesel engines do cause enormous amounts of deaths every year. Let's work on better managing that somehow and dealing with it, rather than going on a world crusade and pointing at the ice caps and saying we must have change. Let's do something practical. Let's see so people's lives aren't destroyed by crushing carbon taxations, being told they can't go on foreign holidays anymore. How about we just continue this environmentalist trajectory, and if we are going to punish anybody, let's punish the countries who pollute the most. China. Let's do that. Let's make countries who pour their shit into the sea, like Haiti. Let's say no more foreign aid to Haiti until you learn how to use bins and you learn how to use landfills and incinerators to get rid of your rubbish. Simple, but no. They want you are a carbon sinner. You are a climate witch, an anti-climate change witch. This is what they want. This is why I've been telling you for years, we have been so badly damaged by the people of the books, all those books. And they put an idea into his head that there's real law, right? There's real law. There's natural law. That's what real law is. And then there's subjective cultural law or theological law. And subjective cultural or theological law, and that includes scientific law, because scientific laws by their nature are never fixed and settled. They're always changing. So any scientist who says to you, the science is settled, is not a scientist, because no science has ever been settled. We thought there was a time that we thought that there was the smallest thing were molecules. Then we found atoms. Then we found inside atoms were electrons, protons, and neutrons. Then we found inside them quark strangeness and charms. Now we're looking at things like Higgs boson. There is no science ever settled. It's never settled. So when people say the science of climate change is settled, they're not being scientists. They're being dogmatic. And where did they get that from? Jehovahism. The people of the books mentality has come in, and this leads to fundamentalism and also a judgmental thing. But this whole thing that any person has a problem with Greta Thunberg, they're a bastard bully picking on a little child. Well, I can guarantee you, when her ancestor, her equivalent was in Sweden 300 years ago, he's a witch, she's a witch, and then someone said, that kid's a little fucking shit, they would have said, how dare you talk about a little innocent child like that?